we're pleased to be able to talk about the elephant in the room. This year, it's been an interesting dichotomy, if you will, where a community that has set its whole reputation around certification as it was, now has to deal with certification or non-certification as it is in the future, because the FAA has decided to allow us to work within the framework, but also color outside the lines at the same time. Kirk Kleinholz, sales manager for Dynon Avionics. Tell the story about how Dynon pretty much tipped over the whole apple cart.
Well, it's a pretty long story, and thanks for having me, Jim. It's a pretty exciting story for us to tell, and I think for the aviation community to hear. You know, I think Dynon has probably been on this path almost since our inception in early 2000s. Our original target was to develop innovative, cost-effective products for the experimental amateur-built market. And of course, kind of concurrent with that development, we grew into the new light sport market, and that was a huge benefit to Dynon. We've had the opportunity by originating in those markets to innovate quickly, to be very nimble in our feature updates and feature additions and adding new capabilities to our products. That's just always been a unique characteristic of the experimental amateur-built market, and we're the beneficiaries of that. But we've long known that this technology is very compelling. It brings a lot of safety, just easier operation and more enjoyable operation of your aircraft. So I think we've long known, and the aviation community has long hoped, that technology like ours would find its way into the existing certified fleet. So we've intellectually been on this path for a long time. Practically speaking, we started actively working towards all the things that would get us to certification for several years. Our factory has been on a continual path of upgrades, improvements to our quality program, having a well-structured quality program. That's the underpinnings of the PMA process. So that actually started a long time before our actual certification efforts. Additionally, we've had a couple of certified aircraft manufacturers that have been talking to us over the years. We launched an early effort with one manufacturer. It never came to fruition, but both the aircraft manufacturer and Dynon learned a lot in that process of what would be achievable with the FAA. But the key to all of this is in late 2016, we entered into negotiations with the FAA on what certification effort for the Dynon Skyview HDX system would look like. We saw a huge commitment of resources by the FAA, an extraordinary will from the top down in the FAA to find a way to say yes to this compelling technology. And so this has been a very concerted effort over the last 18 months or so on this specific certification effort. And we're super excited that we now have a signed STC. It's a little more than 2 weeks old since it was signed.
Well, with the initial announcements of change in the making at Sun and Fun year before, it was a real interesting day, especially since Dynon was so prominent. EAA, of course, was prominent. It was hysterical watching some of the other companies in the background scowling. We got a kick out of that. But I don't think the industry really knew then that there was this, the phrase is so overused, but this time it applies. There was a paradigm shift, and it was a biggie.
You know, there absolutely was. I think the initial effort you're referring to was an EAA application, right. An STC application by the Experimental Aircraft Association. Right.
Open the door.
To open the door using our very first flight instrument, the EFIS D10A. That product was launched in 2004. Its original model of the prior year, but the model we launched in 2004 is the same device we're manufacturing today. And that was the subject of the EA's STC. It's hard to looking back, it's hard to characterize it as a highly commercial opportunity because that STC was very limited in its scope. Mm-hmm. It constrained the capabilities of the unit, the D10A, to a very specific subset. but it was, I think the phrase is the camel's nose under the tent. It
Yes.
was a toe in the
I've
water.
used that very phrase in this
Exactly.
regard.
And it's very apt in this case. It was a shock to the aviation community that it was approved, and its certification basis was quite unique, completely different than the STC we're talking about here today. Mm-hmm. The D10A was approved under a unique set of criteria. It's not even a PMA component. But again, recognition of that effort had us redouble our efforts towards PMA and again towards our current STC.
Well, what was fun about it, and this is, as you may be aware, I had a long affiliation with X-Prize. Mm-hmm. X-Prize understands that disruption is not a dirty word. I love the word.
Yep.
That announcement and what followed was highly disruptive. And it certainly put a few of the don't rock the boat companies that we can innovate really gradually and just add a new feature and add a new color and maybe a different dimension and oh yeah, maybe the knob turns to the left now. But it set everybody back and realized that business as we knew it could no longer be done.
Well, and I've heard that term before, disruptive technology, and I agree with your sentiment about it. I don't consider what we're doing disruptive.
Really? Cool.
In that I think it's more synergistic, building on the progression of technology. Mm-hmm. That has been shifting for a long time, for decades. The more monumental shift, frankly, has been the internal attitudes and perceptions in the FAA itself.
Oh, no question.
You know, a decade ago, when we were really sowing the seeds of this opportunity in the experimental world, you know, it could be difficult to find personnel in the FAA that had any real-world practical experience with the EAB community. Many of them didn't fully understand the nature of that community. Rare was the FAA person that had ever flown an experimental amateur-built aircraft, worked on them, built them. But in the last decade, certainly in the last half decade, the FAA has seen a real influx of new personnel that bring new attitudes and new perspectives because of their direct personal experience in the experimental world. And we're all the beneficiaries of that. So I don't see what we're doing as disruptive, but it's certainly different than the traditional certification method, which has largely been built on the TSO process. What we have done with our STC and in collaboration with the FAA is seeking alternative means of compliance to achieving certification. So we're not cutting corners, we're checking all the boxes we need to check, and we're doing it using means alternative to the traditional TSO process. I don't consider that disruptive, except, of course, if you're one of those that have a huge historic investment in the TSO process, then it's only natural to be suspicious of what does Dynon do to get here? What have we done to get here? But again, we believe we're taking a highly responsible approach. We are sincerely wanting to see our technology improve safety and the joy of flying. And the process has helped us become a better company. It's improved our quality systems. It's improved our product design and engineering. Our STC effort has seen us make a lot of changes in the human factors elements of an already very good, well-received product. I had the pleasure and opportunity to be the company pilot in our test flights with the FAA for this system. And I personally can't take exception with any of the human factors issues they raised. I was pleased to see us embrace all of those, roll those into the product. And we're a better company, and the Skyview HDX system is a better product because of that.
It's a nice flying system. Really have enjoyed my opportunities to fly it heretofore. And I'm kind of picky about the pilot-machine interface, so to speak.
Right.
When glass cockpit became a thing, we watched two major players fight it out. we watched one of those players do some extraordinary work on that interface and not get the recognition they deserved. And more important, the industry took its own time to realize that not only did it have to do a job, but it had to do a job and incorporate the pilot's needs as part of the process.
Right.
Did that. Nice job.
Yep.
Question is, where do you go from here?
Where do we go from here? Well, just to fill in the blanks, the STC we've attained gives approval for our Skyview HDX integrated system to be installed in 172 models F Foxtrot through model Sierra S. And the system offers an integrated system of flight instruments, engine instruments, 2-axis autopilot, ADS-B in and out, integral moving map, VFR GPS navigator. Pretty remarkable system, and interestingly, the STC does in fact require the use of the EFIS D10A, the same instrument that the EAA had approved of their STC. In our STC, the D10A is a required separate backup system. So where do we go from here? Well, right off the bat, our goal is to expand our approved model list, the AML, to capture as many single-engine and multi-engine aircraft as feasible. That's a monumental job for us. Currently, we're working very deliberately on sort of a sequential progression of models, but very quickly we'll need to fan that effort out. And I anticipate that we will eventually start collaborating with others, some of our existing business partners, maybe other avionics shops that have particular expertise with certain airframes. There's still a tremendous amount of work ahead of us to do that and to broaden this market. But we're excited to do that, and lots and lots of aircraft owners are obviously excited for that too, because my average day is responding to a lot of phone calls and emails. When will my airplane be next?
There you go.
It's a good problem to have, but we have a lot of work to do.
Outstanding. Well, in a moment we'll switch over to Mark to talk about certification processes, the rules, the regs, the nitty-gritty. But before we go, the one question I have for you above and beyond all that is this is a conservative industry. You're here and have been AEA members. You're here among this community. There are installers here that are starting to look at you kind of going, okay, maybe there's some business here. But overall, how is the reception right now that all this has transpired, and what's it going to take to meet the goals that you have for yourselves?
So how has the reception been? You know, I haven't had any negative experiences among any industry personnel here at the EAA, certainly. From the time we announced our effort at Oshkosh in 2017, last year, till now, I've had lots of conversations with lots of different people in the aviation industry, and certainly many are guarded, skeptical, concerned about what it means for their own investments in this market, and I have an absolute high regard for the investment they make. Many of them were pioneers in the industry in the way that we've been pioneers in our segment. So I have a high respect and regard for that, and it's only natural to protect this investment you have. But I think every one of those competitors are equally sincere in the pursuit of improving safety, improving airplane capability, reinvigorating the aging fleet of small GA aircraft. We all have an interest in keeping this industry and this market healthy. They have to find their way to embrace all these new opportunities, and the same as we have, and there will be opportunities for lots of other companies besides Dynon. It's really a big market and lots of pilots to serve, and frankly, the competition we've seen in this pursuit has made us become a better company and develop a better product. And I hope those that see us as a threat or a serious competitor recognize that we're serious, but we welcome the competition, and I think we can all serve this market well.
Outstanding. Kirk Kleinholz, Sales Manager for Dynon Avionics. We sure appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for the time,
especially
Jim.
Backgrounding all this.
Aero-News Network's coverage of the 61st Annual AEA International Convention and Trade Show, live from Las Vegas, is brought to you in part by the following sponsors.
It's called Airtext Plus. The mobile office is now a true, cost-effective win-win reality because being available and part of the communication chain keeps you in control. Visit us at www.airtext.aero for more information and get started staying in touch today.
Avidyne is the pilot-centric innovator. If you look at Avidyne's 20-plus year history, we had the first moving map, full color, that had everything on it. We were the first ones to do a primary flight display for general aviation. Avidyne has lots of opportunities and things in the works that will continue the leadership role we played in the past of coming up with new concepts and always having the best user interface to them.